Excuse me. I had to get some technical stuff in order. Greetings. I'm Brother Yehuda from the Congregation of Israel, a representative of the NMP, the Nazarene Messianic Party. And we'd like to greet you, all those of you who's taken the time out to visit our channel, the NMP Vanguard News. Today, we would like to deal with a subject pertaining to birthright citizenship. We're going to investigate that a bit. Our focus or our goal is to bring forth political education, full disclosure. We also teach the Bible, but we are not religious in the traditional sense. We approach the Bible from a socio-political perspective. And we argue that is the appropriate way to approach the Bible. Today, we're going to investigate birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship. And we want to look into the 14th Amendment. We're going to look at a couple of things that's being said so we can understand what this birthright citizenship is about, at least from the evidence that is presented to us. And what we will find out is that the birthright citizenship battle is actually the pathway to political power. We want to investigate also why the Democratic Party in particular they're pushing for birthright citizenship for undocumented, or as they would say, quote unquote, undocumented or illegal aliens. I want to make this clear. We want to put a differentiation between the legal battles of birthright citizenship, undocumented people, or as they will call illegal foreigners. This isn't about ethnicity. The media have turned this into a battle between white, Latino, between blacks, whites, and Latinos, or Haitians, or anyone migrating or immigrating from so-called other foreign powers. We're not going to turn this into a battle against ethnicities. We're not going to play this identity politic thing where you have our so-called Latino brothers and sisters fighting against the so-called African-American brothers and sisters, or so-called European brothers and sisters, or Asians brothers and sisters. We're not going to do that. And so in order for us not to fall into that trap, it's important for us to investigate it, this birthright citizenship, according to what it means and what it signifies, and the context in which it carries in the 14th Amendment, at least according to some of the senators who was debating the subject and the amendment, the 14th Amendment, the first section in particular. The senators who was debating this in 1866. We're going to look into the Congressional Globe, May 30th, 1866, and we're going to look at some of the debates to address some of the questions. Again, so the 14th Amendment, when we're looking at the 14th Amendment, I'm going to read it to you, and we're going to investigate this bit by bit. And so I'd like to welcome you to the Biblical School of Global Liberation for All Oppressed People. We are the Vanguard, the NMP Vanguard League, and hopefully we can bring more content so we can be politically educated. If we're not politically educated, then those who have assumed the seats of power can continue to manipulate the people. And as long as the people are arguing emotionally and not scientifically and according to knowledge and according to the facts, they will not only be manipulated, but they will be suppressed and not able to find their way for justice and equity and all that the founding fathers of the United States argued. So greetings to you. One of our brothers found the channel. And so we're slowly getting this up and going as we work on this YouTube channel. Now, when we're looking at the 14th Amendment, this is a debate between the senators and the House of Representatives. In particular, we're going to look at as this amendment was going through the House, or excuse me, not the House, but it was going through the Senate. We want to look at it as it was going through the Senate. Okay. And I want you to all to remember, and if you don't know, it's important to understand, as we have here, we have the Capitol building. This is where the political battles are waged pertaining to all of the different facets of society. This is where it happens. This is where it happens. Okay. This happens here in the Capitol building. So know that the U.S. is divided up. The United States have three branches of government: the legislative, executive, and the judicial. It's important to understand that, even that within itself, by not understanding the way it's set up, many people get discouraged at the world of politics. Like, case in point, we have the United States presidency. This would be the executive branch. And so when you look at the news, they give you extensive coverage of the candidates who's running for president. And so if the people don't study the Constitution, they believe that the United States president is elected by the people. And when he isn't elected by the people, they say that there is a flaw in government. No, it's not a flaw in government. It's understanding how it works. He's elected by the Electoral College, or an electorate assembly. This is what they mean by the college. The key for the American people is to understand who chooses the electorates, and realize that we have given our consent for certain parties to choose electorates for us. All right. Now we'll have another discussion pertaining to that. But when it comes down to the United States government, there isn't nowhere in the Constitution where the president is elected by the people. Furthermore, which is argued that the most powerful branch of government isn't the judicial, it isn't the executive, but is actually the legislative. Now, the way that the United States government is established now, and through the struggles of the people, the legislative branch is the branch of government in which the people have direct control. A lot of emphasis is on the executive branch, and when you vote and the president don't get the popular vote, but the president gets the vote of the Electoral College, you all disgruntled. No, you just got to understand how it works. And it is on purpose that most of the propaganda is geared towards the presidency. And when it comes down to the most powerful branch, it is argued the legislative branch, where the people vote does count, there isn't extensive coverage of said senators. It isn't extensive coverage of who's going to sit in the House or in the seat of representatives. The way that the media have geared their political coverage is very, very deceitful. And unless you are intentional in understanding the way it works, you're going to be a victim of confusion. People say, well, you need to get rid of the House. You need to get rid of the Electoral College. I wouldn't say so. Once you understand how it works, it's fitting. And to put it in context, it was actually the Electoral College that had President Abraham Lincoln sit in the seat of power in the executive branch. Things must be learned and understood. And so what we want to do is begin to address these things. Now, the legislative branch was having an argument pertaining to citizenship. And so I'm going to read before they ratify this 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was ratified July 9th, 1868. We're going to go back to the debates in 1866 briefly for our point for today's session. But the 14th Amendment reads, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Now, let me read again, after all of the debating, what the 14th Amendment, Section 1 says again. And I'm going to read it again because I want you all to consider what's not said. And that is foreign persons or illegals or undocumented persons, children born in the United States are citizens. This is what especially the liberal or the Democratic Party push, and we're going to examine why. It has a lot to do with the pathway to political power. All right. And also on the other side, not only is it argued that the Democrats are always pushing for immigrants and migrants for the sake of the seats inside of the political power. That's why the Democratic, and we're going to investigate it. That's why those who were a part of the Democratic Party wanted to count their slaves as citizens to vote, or not as citizens, but as persons, counted as whole persons to vote. And I understand how we've been fed it. I was fed the information again, this whole 3/5 of a person clause and all this other stuff, and I didn't understand the context of it. But we're gonna address it in the future so we can understand the 3/5 context of the slave and why this has all to do with political power. And so when the Democratic Party fought for the slaves being counted as one entire vote, they counted that when the slave was a slave. But then when the slave was freed, then the Democratic Party went against giving the slave or the former slave the right to vote. See, we have to look at their cunning sophistry. Very cunning, and how they work. All right. So when we're looking at the so-called Democrats, there's a seat. America did something very radical, and that is have seats of power accessible to the common man. That was unknown for millennia in history under monarchies and tyrannical dictatorships. And not only the seat of power accessible to the common man able to exercise political power through the electorate process. This new paradigm of political accessibility was revolutionary. It was not done in the history of the establishing of empires. So that needs investigation. That warrants more investigation. So again, all persons, 14th Amendment, Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property. Okay, so we're doing another experiment here. All right, it's working. All right, we got you in here, bro. You may have to use earphones. I would suggest it because of the echo, but I'm not sure. This is all a test run for us as far as that. So if you could hear me clear, let me know if you could hear me. And then whenever you're able, I don't know if you got to get your stuff together, because right now, if you are trying to reply, I don't hear you at the moment. Okay. So with that being said, we're going to continue. And hopefully we got one of our comrades in here who, as we adjust to the technical aspect of this studio we're in, I'm going to move forward, but we're adjusting so we could bring more people in to have our discussions on the Nazarene, or should I say the NMP Vanguard News. Now, when we're looking at the 14th Amendment, it talks of persons who are naturalized. It says on the 14th Amendment, all persons born or naturalized in the United States. If we go to Black's Law Dictionary, I would like to go to the Black's Law Dictionary. And I want to check this out for a moment. We're going to look at a definition, Black's Law Dictionary. And with Black's Law Dictionary, if we're looking at naturalization, notice carefully what the Constitution is saying and what it's not saying. Naturalization, the process by which a person acquires nationality after birth and becomes entitled to the privileges of the U.S. citizenship. All right. So we're looking at the process by which a person acquires nationality after birth and becomes entitled to the privileges. So this was one of the big debates, because when you're looking at the debates in 1866, as I titled this, The Pathway to Power, they were the senators in their debates in 1866, according to the recorded debates in the Congressional Globe for May 30th, 1866. One underlying factor when it came down to citizenship was the access, as they said, quote, political power, unquote. I mean, this struggle for political power is unprecedented. I mean, what we have now is that under feudalism, you had armed revolts, and a lot of people talk about armed revolts today, but they haven't critically assessed the new political paradigm that mankind has entered into after the armed revolutions of the Revolutionary War, the Haitian Revolution, the revolution that took place in the USSR, the revolution that took place in China. Well, the reason why they were leaning more towards armed revolt, because they were coming out of feudalism. Feudalism was dying. Monarchy was dying. So when the United States was breaking off from the crown, it was breaking off of a semi-feudal monarchy. They were entering into a new paradigm, and political power, it was never seen at no one outside of the ruling families ever had access to political power. So now, to become a citizen inside of this new democracy, quote unquote, citizenship, once you became a citizen, not just abiding by certain laws under their jurisdiction if you killed somebody or if you hurt somebody or robbed somebody. No, when they're talking about complete citizenship, they're talking about having access to political power. That's what they're talking about. Bear with me a moment. Okay. All right. Good enough. Got you, bro. So see what you can do with the technology on your end. So we're going to investigate this, but first realize that the 14th Amendment, let's see, just give it a shot when you're able. So if you want to try with your mic to see if it's working, just go ahead and say something. And I'll be standing by for that. Okay. All persons born are naturalized. Naturalization, it is the process a person acquires, okay? So it's the process by which a person acquires nationality after birth and becomes entitled to the privileges. Okay, so in the United States, collective naturalization occurs when designated groups are made citizens by treaty, such as the Louisiana Purchase, or by a law of Congress, as in annexation of Texas and Hawaii. Okay, they became part and parcel. Individual naturalization must follow certain steps. A petition for naturalization by a person of lawful age who has been a lawful resident of the United States for 5 years. B, investigation by the Immigration and Naturalization Service to determine whether the applicant can speak and write the English language, has a knowledge of the fundamentals of American government and history, is attached to the principles of the Constitution, and is of good moral character. C, hearings before a U.S. district court or certain state courts of record, and after a lapse of at least 30 days, a second appearance in court when the oath of allegiance is administered. So what we have here, this idea of the 14th Amendment isn't making reference to people who are on the American soil illegally. So now you have a case if you are naturalized. Oh, so today we would say you may have a green card or you have become a citizen. Your children born are now citizens. They don't have to go through that process you went through. You went through the process. So now your child will become a citizen. So we have naturalization, and also subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, there was a debate in Congress about the jurisdiction. What did it mean? So if we go back to the congressional globe, here we have jurisdiction also out of the Black's Law Dictionary. But if we go back to the congressional globe and we look at the debates among the congressmen and look at the debates they were having in 1866, we can also get an idea of the context in which they understood jurisdiction to mean. And that's important because right now we're looking at subject to the jurisdiction. If we go to, and you can find this on the 1866, the Congressional Globe, and you can go to the original copies or the original manuscripts, or they have a digitized manuscripts of the debates in particular on the 14th Amendment, which is more digital or is not, written in the old text, or should I say the old documents, is more up to date. Now, presently, I am looking at the up to date reference, and Senator Howard on May 30th, 1866, argued. Senator Howard, he said, "I hope that amendment to the amendment will not be adopted. Indians born within the limits of the United States and who maintain their tribal relations are not, in the sense of this amendment, born subject to the jurisdiction of the United States." So they're debating on the wording, but they're also explaining, okay, you may have Indians born in the land where our jurisdiction resides over. You have a lot of indigenous tribes still here. Some they have treaties with, some they didn't have treaties with. They called them wild Indians. They didn't have a treaties with them, but they're born within the territory of the United States. And so the argument is, if you're just born in the United States, then that would make them citizens. So we got to word this right. So the idea of subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And so the Senator Howard is explaining, you have Indians born in the United States, within the limits of the United States, and who maintain their tribal relations are not, in the sense of this amendment, born subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. They are regarded and always have been in our legislation and jurisprudence as being quasi-foreign nations. So here they're arguing immediately over the assumption that some may say that hey, they're born here with the United States, so therefore let them be citizens. And this is why the 14th Amendment argued born or naturalized in the United States. So when we're looking at born in the United States or naturalized in the United States, we are not talking about people who were of the foreign nation and not going through the naturalization process, not going through the process to pledge their allegiance to the United States and not just a foreign entity. Now, to show that this is what they're explaining, this is page 41 I was reading from, but I'm also going to go to page 46. 46 pertaining to the jurisdiction thereof. I want to go to page 46 as well, as we look in. Now, if you go into the initial, the Congressional Globe, the original, it may be like page 2000. Like almost page 2893, because it's an extensive document. Now, Senator Trumbull, he argues the provision that all persons born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens, quote unquote, that means subject to the complete jurisdiction thereof. Now, does the senator from Wisconsin pretend to say that the Navajo Indians are subject to the complete jurisdiction of the United States? What do we mean by subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? That's his question. Not owing allegiance to anyone else. That is what it means. You can sue can you sue a Navajo Indian in court? The question was asking. So he's looking at the context of this jurisdiction. Yes, if they commit a crime here, yes, we can subject them to our laws. If they murder someone, we can execute them and incriminate them, but they wasn't subject to the complete jurisdiction. In other words, can we sue them at law? So if we're looking at jurisdiction, we find a term of comprehensive import, embracing every kind of judicial action. So we could probably bring them to court if they murder one of the citizens, but can we bring them to court to sue them? Are they subject to that? Can they, with the Navajo Nation, would they honor that, or do we have right to just go and take the property because they're sovereign? And that's why a lot of people who want, they when they become sovereign, so-called, and they become their own sovereign, they're no longer subject to the complete jurisdiction. That's why I have Moors and others who may argue they want to be sovereign. They don't want to be citizens of the United States no longer. So therefore, they give up their political power, number one. Two is they become no longer subject over the complete jurisdiction because they're no longer citizens. And so the Constitution isn't arguing about non-citizens having children. It's arguing about those who are citizens, or they're going through they went through the naturalization process to become citizens. Their children. And this also applies to a whole new class or race of people who was becoming citizens in 1866, and that was the former slaves. So this is also part and parcel of the context of the terrible legislation that was judged against the Denmark Vesey. So we can get emotional, but let's look at the law pertaining to it. And this isn't about me condemning or against Latinos, against Asians, because I consider us all a part of the human race, all a part of the human family. If we're going to address the social issues, which is causing the people to leave their borders, if we're going to address the exploitation throughout the globe, these are different subjects, which warrants also conversation. Definitely. Most definitely it does. So if we're looking at the complete jurisdiction, this is a term of, according to Black's Law Dictionary, jurisdiction, a term of comprehensive import embracing every kind of judicial action. It is the power of the court to decide a matter in controversy and presupposes the existence of a duly constituted court with control over the subject matter and the parties. So the argument is, just because they're born there of the Navajo Nation, they're born within the confines or within the territory of the United States, but do we have complete control over all the parties involved? Can we sue them in court? And this is what Trumbull was bringing up in his argument against this subjection to the jurisdiction. So Senator Trumbull, again, he says the means subject, that means subject. Let me start from the beginning. The provision is that all persons born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens, quote unquote. That means subject to the complete jurisdiction thereof, unquote. So this is what he's explaining. Constitute with control over the subject matter, having complete control over in all matters, not just criminal matters, but the entire jurisdiction, criminal and political. They didn't have that type of dominion over quasi-foreign nations or even allied nations. You don't have that control. That's why if a person commit a crime and go to Mexico, we have no jurisdiction over Mexico. You have people who come into Mexico, but still coming from Mexico. They want their children to be citizens here, but they're not going through the process, so they can't do it. even by law. Because first, even if you're going to go through the process of following the laws of the United States, you're running out the door, not keeping it by being here illegally. So immediately you forfeit that whole idea. You're trampling or you're ignoring the law itself of the United States. Now, as far as people, the Democrat, well, what about the children and all this other stuff? I get it. And these are matters that need to be discussed. But what other matter need to be discussed is the parent who put the children in that circumstance. They knew they were here illegally. They had the child here illegally. They put them in that circumstance. Even if they're here just visiting, but they don't plan to reside here, but they're visiting and they have a child here, they think their child can get citizenship. That's not how it works. This isn't what the 14th Amendment was actually bringing out. That's not what it was bringing out at all. Okay. So it's important for us to understand this so we won't get caught up in the mess. We won't get caught up in the emotions, but understanding exactly what it is about. Now, this was Senator Trumbull's argument, or Trumbull. This was his argument. Now, I want to look at another one. We're looking at the complete jurisdiction. The complete jurisdiction. And this will be page, I want to go to page 49. Complete jurisdiction. Now, look how they explain this here so we can understand that the 14th Amendment isn't talking about undocumented or illegal people. It's just the way it is. Let's not turn this into an ethnic thing. Let's understand how the laws are and then understand how they work. And you're going to find, in order to make any changes, in order to do anything, you're going to have to organize politically. You just won't be able to run off the whim of your emotions and just going tearing stuff up and rioting. That's not going to do it. It's not going to do it. It will work against you. So what we're looking at, understanding intelligently how the governments of the world work and not going off our emotions, but working in a discipline and in a certain type of knowledge. And that means building on knowledges of facts and truth, not just having knowledge and information of rhetoric and emotional rants. Trumbull argues again, I have already replied to the suggestion as to the Indians being subject to our jurisdiction. Indians is being used as an example because it was in a context then, but it's being used as an example. They are born here in the United States, but that doesn't necessarily make them citizens. Okay. So what we have here, I have already replied to the suggestion as to the Indians being born to our jurisdiction. They are not subject to our jurisdiction in the sense of owing allegiance solely to the United States. And the senator from Maryland, if he will look into our statutes, will research in vain for any means of trying these wild Indians. We can't sue them in court. You will not ever find it. They can make treaties, but there is no judicial proceedings that we can't impose all of our judicial proceedings over them. A person can only be tried for a criminal offense in pursuance of laws, and he must be tried in a district which must have been fixed by law before the crime was committed. We have had in this country and have today a large region of country within the territorial limits of the United States, unorganized, over which we do not pretend to exercise any civil or criminal jurisdiction, where wild Indians or wild tribes of Indians roam at pleasure, subject to their own laws and regulations, and we do not pretend to interfere with them. So this was his argument on the jurisdiction. Okay. This is the argument on the jurisdiction. Now, I wanted to read that because if we're looking at the 14th Amendment, while we're looking at this 14th Amendment, we're learning the context. Only the persons who comes under complete jurisdiction, according to Senator Trumbull. That's why the conclusion and the ratification doesn't mention foreigners or illegal foreigners or undocumented. It's not even giving you an inkling. So when people are saying that Donald Trump is changing the 14th Amendment, where? But if you don't read it, you just go with it. I am curious to find out what of the 14th Amendment, whether you agree with him personally or not. I'm not into the personal thing. I'm talking politics. I'm talking law and facts. I don't care at this moment in time. If we're gonna have a discussion on his personal life, that's another discussion. But right now, if we're talking about law and politics, where is it he's trying to change the Constitution? Where? Now, some people are saying that, oh, they're coming for the African American next. More propaganda. Let's go to another senator doing the same debate. And it went through a series of days, but I am just dealing with the debates inside of Congress among the senators, 1866, May 30th. Senator Howard addresses citizenship and how long is it? Can it be taken away? Senator Howard, I take it for granted that when a man becomes a citizen of the United States under the Constitution, they cannot cease to be a citizen. So all of this propaganda of lies, because propaganda just means advertisement. Propaganda itself isn't bad. I'm talking propaganda lies, confusion. Oh, they're coming for you next. Senator Howard, and no one disagreed with his position. I take it for granted that when a man becomes a citizen of the United States under the Constitution, they cannot cease to be a citizen except, he said, brother, he said except by expatriation. Expatriation, what's that? Expatriation, Black's Law Dictionary. The voluntary act of abandoning or renouncing one's country and becoming a citizen or subject of another. That's what those who relinquish their citizenship, they may become sovereign. That's expatriation. So that's one way they can lose their citizenship, or the commission of some crime by which his citizenship shall be forfeited. Treasonous crimes. Other than that, there is no grounds for anyone who already have citizenship. And even Mr. Trump, President Trump, he isn't going back according to some arguments. He's just simply saying from now on. But he isn't arguing against the Constitution. Then I have heard people bring up the court case. It was a court case which was very interesting as well, because it was a Chinese brother who was Kim Wong Ark. He's brought up in discussion. Kim Wong Ark. And what's interesting about Kim Wong Ark is that the same day they debated about the Chinese, who were moving into California and how they really wasn't an issue. They really wasn't a problem. And so the senator from California argued, no, we don't have a problem. In fact, the senator from California, he argued that the Chinese, when he was addressing the Chinese, he was explaining. This is from Senator Mr. Canes, Senator Canes. He says, so much for what has been said in connection with the application of this provision to the state that I, in part, reside here. I beg my honorable friend from Pennsylvania to give himself no further trouble on account of the Chinese in California or on the Pacific coast. We are fully aware of the nature of the class of people and their influence among us. We feel entirely able to take care of them and to provide against any evils that may flow from their presence among us. We are entirely ready to accept the provision proposed in this constitutional amendment that the children born here of Mongolian parents shall be declared by the Constitution of the United States to be entitled to civil rights and equal protection before the law with others. So the senators was debating the Chinese too, because they were coming in, but they wasn't coming in as illegals. They were coming in to become citizens, some of them. Kim Wong-ark is an example of one who was becoming citizens. If you notice here, March 1898, the case of Kim Wong-ark, this was the writ of habeas corpus issued October 2nd, 1895 by the District Court of the United States for the Northern District of California, to the Collector of Customs at the Port of San Francisco in behalf of Wong Kim Ark, who alleged that he was a citizen of the United States of more than 21 years of age and was born at San Francisco in 1873 of parents of Chinese descent and subjects to the Emperor of China, but domiciled, they were emperor's subjects, Kim, or should I say Wong Kim Ark parents were subjects of the Emperor of China, but domiciled residents at San Francisco. We're going to look at that word. It's important. Domiciled. It's important. That's left out with the Kim Wong-ark decision. His parents were domiciled residents at San Francisco, and that on his return to the United States on the steamship Coptic in August 1895 from a temporary visit to China, he applied to said Collector of Customs for permission to land, and was by the collector refused such permission, and was restrained of his liberty by the collector and by the general manager of the steamship company acting under his direction, in violation of the Constitution of the laws of the United States, not by virtue of any judicial order or proceedings, but solely upon the pretense that he was not a citizen of the United States. Now, when we're looking at the 14th Amendment, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So now how would the court rulings apply? His children was domiciled. I'm sorry, brother.
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
All right.
Yeah, you know what? I think you did it right the first time, and I messed up.
Oh, okay.
I had messed up because I didn't notice I had to bring you into the studio again.
Oh, okay.
So now we getting learning how this works.
Okay, Cool.
All
So
right.
when I join on, you just got to bring the guests in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So here we looking at Kim Wong Ark. We almost done with the session for today, but bringing him in to show that his parents were domiciled residents, and this is the argument when they're trying to use Kim Wong Ark and the 14th Amendment, and they're using Kim Wong Ark to justify illegals or non-documented persons, and Kim Wong Ark doesn't apply because his parents were domiciled residents of the United States. And so they stopped him from coming in, but I kept repeating docimiled. What is that? Docimil. Domicile, excuse me. Domicile. A person, and this is the Black's Law Dictionary. Black's Law Dictionary. We have, excuse me, I don't want to go that far. Let's go back to where we were. Hold on a second. Okay. Bear with me a second. Domicile, a person's legal home. So Kim Wong Ark parents legally resided in the United States. So a domicile, a person's legal home, that place where a man has his true, fixed, and permanent home and principal establishment, and to which, whenever he is absent, he has the intention of returning. Smith versus Smith, 206 PA. So what we have here is Kim Wong Ark's parents were domiciled. So him being born, him being born from them, they were legally here. They legally resided here. So the courts ruled in its favor, on top of the fact that senators already argued that the Chinese who were coming in wasn't hostile, so that leaned more towards the court rulings. But when it came down to the fact that his parents were domiciled here, then him born here, that is what gave him the right, according to the judgment of the Supreme Court. So we're not looking at undocumented citizens, or should I say undocumented persons, not citizens. Okay. So when we're looking at birthright citizenship, no, they are not going for the African so-called American next or the Black American next. They can't. This was already debated in Congress. Unless you give up your citizenship on your own, or you have committed some treasonous crime in which your citizenship is under threat. Okay. So this is what we looking at jurisdiction. This debate was going on. So we're looking at this birthright. This at the same time is dealing with the freedom of slaves, and also bringing in the slaves because they were born here. They wasn't under any other foreign powers or quasi-foreign powers, at least the freed slaves. We're not talking about Black indigenous people who are Black indigenous so-called Indians. No, we're talking about those freed slaves. And they were able to, under the 14th Amendment, receive citizenship. Okay. And this was also addressed, and I'll read this before we close out. And this was made known by Senator Salisbury. Senator Salisbury, he commented on it, and he's going to explain what he understood by the 14th Amendment in the context of the African American or the former slaves. The Senator Salisbury He says, I do not presume that anyone will pretend to disguise the fact that the object of this first section, speaking of the first section of the 14th Amendment, is simply to declare that Negroes shall be citizens of the United States. There can be no other object in it. I presume that a further extension of the legislative kindness and beneficence of Congress toward that class of people. Now they're going to go back and forth. In fact, note, not one Democrat voted for the 14th Amendment. And we're going to address that as we continue to dealing with the NMP Vanguard News. Not one Democrat voted for it. We're reading all the debates, and after all the debates, not one Democrat voted. And some will, if you fact check it, they're going to confirm not one Democrat voted for the 14th Amendment. And when you fact check it, they say that's true, but the context was there wasn't many Democrats. And we'll tell you why. There's another context that they left out of that context. And we'll show you why many Democrats had lost political voice and political power, only to regain it again later. But they lost it. And it's important to understand why. And in the context of it, then you can understand this entire argument on this new democratic republic, this argument on being a citizen, which is a doorway to political power on both ends. Those who sit in the seats of power, because the seats of power are neutral. The senator seats are neutral. The House of Representatives seat is neutral. The judicial branch and the Supreme Court seats are neutral. And also the executive branch are neutral. The seats are transient. It's who sit in the seat. We can't confuse the dogmas of those who sit in the seats with the seats, which I have been guilty of for years. We have to differentiate the seat of power from those who sit in the seat of power. Because you can have those who are willing to exercise justice, who sit in the seat of power, who would change the entire paradigm of the social conditions. The seats are neutral. So now, there's a lot of reevaluating that had to take place with me personally as I study more of the political paradigm of the United States, and for that matter, the development of the democratic access to power across the globe. Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, this spread of access of the common man to political power. And the key is for the common man to unite on a political line and in discipline and intelligence. Anything you want to say, brother, to our discussion before we close? Anything you want to add?
Yeah. This is interesting. I learned today also as well. Well, first of all, let me say that word you was mentioning, domicile, is actually domicile. My wife, because she dealt with taxes for so long, and that applies to like people who, like I said, like in New York City. You work in New York City, but you live in Jersey. That'll tell you sort of tax bracket. That tax phrase will put them under domicile. Almost related to what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think another thing is interesting too about citizenship. I learned, and I learned this from David Harvey, in his book A Brief History of Neoliberalism. When he was talking about China, when China began to develop cities to strengthen their position in the global market, many of the citizens who were migrant workers that lived out in the countryside, they all started flooding into the cities. But the issue is, even though they all was living in the country of China, them moving into the cities, they literally were considered illegal immigrants. So, they had to become citizens of the cities and so on and so on and so forth. And I just thought that was interesting when it comes to the migrant situation, that they living in the land, but it'll be the same thing. You know, you didn't have all the privileges or citizenship of one who was living in Beijing or Shenzhen or the other Guangdong and them other cities. So you was considered a migrant worker. So you didn't have the full jurisdiction in that particular case. A lot of those people were considered sovereign citizens because they were sitting on their ancestor lands and out in the countryside. But the same thing applied to them. I know a lot of times when people think of immigration, you think of people coming into the country. But if you don't understand the legal process of it, a lot of times it's not even that case. It happened the same thing in Haiti. Many of the migrant workers lived out in the countryside. And because of, the American colonialists with the rice, squeezing them out of, forcing American rice on them, and they couldn't produce the rice to feed themselves, they became migrant workers moving into the cities. And they started running into the same issues that they was having when they began to migrate up here, into the U.S. So it's not about, okay, well, you come from this country, you're not a citizen. Because you, like you mentioned, you got people who want to be sovereign. But politically, you're not the same as a, 14th or 15th Amendment citizen here in the United States. So your rights and your jurisdictions totally different. And so when you see that in other countries, you say, oh, okay, this ain't about really physical migration, but it's about actually citizenship according to, the actual law. And that's what it takes to actually know the law so you can know how it applies.
Right.
Especially jurisdiction wise.
Yeah, that's very important. Very important.
Yeah.
Yep. To know the
intricacies. And the last thing I'll say is people, man, who keep trying to be sovereigns and so on and so forth, I don't think that they fully understand them revoking their political power.
Right.
Because it's going to take a representation of power when you have total injustice. That's done. There's no other bargaining power that y'all have.
Absolutely. 100%.
So I close with that right there. I just want to add that on.
100%. All right, we're going to close for today's session. We'll pick it back up, most high willing, with another discussion. We like to welcome you all to joining us on the the NMP Vanguard News. We're going to close with today's session, and hopefully you can join us again. And it's something else, too, that I would like to put up there. You can also reach out to us or contact us and get more information on what we're dealing with, and also what we are doing as we, most high willing, he allow us to set up different chapters, hopefully in an area near you, those of you who's listening. Here's an example. I wanted to put this up, our voting and political awareness workshop or discussion. It was something that Plato says, and something that I like to repeat. Plato argued that one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. And so this political awareness is something that must be pushed and must be brought out to the public. We have brothers and sisters in various states who are inquiring about so-called membership and being active in what we're doing. And even the things that we're asking them to do is sort of unorthodox to tradition. People get set in the old ways, and we're saying, listen, we have to come out of those old wine bottles and try the new path. And we just can't be on the corner and arguing and screaming and in a barbershop or in our respective places where we just sitting down, as they say, kicking it, rapping. No, we have to be active. And that's going to take political education. We have to engage with the public And so, even for us to deal with these voting and political awareness sessions in different states, this is necessary because we're not just saying register to vote. It's more with it. This voting is just one aspect of political power, but we don't want to be scattered and just a title like a Democrat or a Republican. We're talking about real organization among those who want real social change. And that's going to come through education and continued study groups and organizing of voter blocks and chapters of the Vanguard in different states. So with that, we're going to close out for today's session. And most high willing, we'll return again. And I'll say peace to all of you who's searching for justice and equity. And hopefully, most high willing, we'll meet again.